This afternoon I was having a pretty good day, so I decided to ruin it by going on Twitter. It's part of my daily routine to check in on Twitter just to make myself mad, as every sane person does, no doubt, and today was nothing special, just endless piles of trash. But while dumpster diving, I found something pretty interesting and alarming. It's a series of posts from a popular streamer named Amaranth. She's massive on Twitch, I'm sure she needs no introduction, I'm positive you all are familiar with her work. She basically invented hot tubs. And on her personal account, she made a series of tweets talking about her stalker. And this shit is fucking scary. It reads like something right out of a Stephen King novel. So I wanted to go over the tweets with all of you, as well as talk about the bigger problem of stalkers on Twitch. Because it's not exclusive to just Amaranth. I think Amaranth has had the most stalkers. She's had like 1,000 stalkers at this point, I think. She's had like an entire fucking football squad worth of stalkers, and that includes third string and bench players. She could fill up an entire Comic-Con convention center with just her stalkers. It's absolutely terrible, and again, it's not just Amaranth. Tons of streamers have talked about their personal experiences with the problem, and one that's always stuck out to me is a really frightening one. I won't name the streamer's name, but there's a streamer on Twitch who has had a problem with a member of her community for almost 4 years now, I believe. And this guy has flown down to her city uninvited, unannounced, to try and track her down and find her. And while doing that, even broke into another streamer's house while they were streaming, went on their stream and tried to use them to reach out to that streamer on their behalf to track her down for them. Absolute fucking lunacy. And they have also, the stalker has also written a manifesto that's over 400 pages long and still being updated to this day. An actual fucking Harry Potter's book worth of delusion and all about like dating the streamer and all kinds of wild shit in there. It's just straight up horrifying and downright sad. So now let's go through Amaranth's tweets today. This is her alt account. She says that her stalker traveled from Estonia, came to her city and camped out in a hotel with a line of sight to her P.O. box and spent over a month camping out daily at a Starbucks next to the P.O. box and streamed it the entire time. Typically to 0 viewers, but growing as he gained notoriety, and every time his account would be taken down, he would just make a new one. This is already so much to digest right here. 44 days and 33 minutes, according to Amaranth, and I'm guessing that's based on how long the stream was up for, based on VODs and all of that, so it was probably realistically a bit more than that, because I'm sure he was there longer off camera. So that is fucking terrifying. Not only was she being stalked, but he was doing it publicly to an audience. Mind-blowing. Camping out at a nearby Starbucks so that way he could be constantly monitoring the P.O. box, hoping to catch her. Like Elmer Fudd trying to set a trap for Bugs Bunny. But that's just the beginning. She said that he'd change his name by just adding more numbers to it, and by his own admission went full scorched earth and sold everything. He sold his house, his car, all his possessions, his cat, and by his own admission again, in publicly posted vlogs, a manifesto. The only thing he brought with him was phone, clothes on his back, and a saxophone, as well as the saxophone case. And he would play the saxophone in some live streams and in public places, and it allowed him to carry around a giant instrument case, which Amaranth said made her nervous because you can put weapons in an instrument case, and I honestly think it's a pretty reasonable fear to have because it makes no sense that he sold everything else except for a fucking saxophone and its case, unless he was planning on becoming like a traveling saxophone performer, like just going around and playing Careless Whisper forever. It makes no sense why he sold everything except that saxophone in its case. Which I agree is very weird, but I think the most concerning thing here is the fact that he sold all of his shit before moving from Europe to be near Amaranth and try and track her down. The fact that he sold everything prior to doing all of this is that kind of behavior that people do right before doing something drastic, like something life ruining and changing. The fact that he'll just cut all ties to everything he's ever owned like that, the whole nothing left to lose mentality, is absolutely fucking terrifying. She goes on saying that she would make it very clear that she didn't want to meet him, didn't want to be anywhere near him, but he would respond by just saying, "Liar, liar, fiance," and would make dancing videos reminiscent of Buffalo Bill dancing scene and send them to her. And then she posts a picture of it. This whole situation is deeply disturbing, and the fact that he would send videos to her privately is just super fucked up as well. literally just rubbing it in her face that he is stalking her and there's nothing she can do about it because the law enforcement wasn't acting very efficiently here, clearly. And then the picture she posts is also super eerie. It looks like something straight out of the SCP wiki. Like, it looks like a goddamn cryptid captured on photograph. It's just an awful, awful situation. She also briefly mentioned that he adopted a feral cat, which wasn't really seen again on the streams, and then says that on Monday the 13th, he streamed himself dressed up and carrying his musical instrument case and changed into formal attire and made the last mile journey to her house and cased the vicinity for 30 minutes, to which the cops declined to act. He streamed himself outside, mumbling about how he knew it was wrong, but he has to, and then he tried breaking in and tried to gain entry, to which Amaranth again called 911, says dispatch was rude, cutting her off, put her on hold, and it took 33 minutes for the 911 responders to finally get there. Amaranth did have armed personnel on standby at her residence, according to her, that would have acted if he successfully broke in, but luckily it didn't come down to that. Law enforcement did get there, he got arrested, got detained, and she says the embassy was contacted and he's currently not in Houston, and that's all she can share for now. Luckily this story has a somewhat happy ending. They got arrested and got kicked out of Houston, hopefully also put behind bars. But there's a lot more to talk about here that I'd like to get into, and that's the law enforcement's response to stalking. One thing that's remained consistent across every single story of a Twitch streamer sharing their personal experience with stalkers, the one thing that is a constant is that law enforcement doesn't do anything about it. In extremely rare cases, they'll allow them to get a restraining order, but even that's super uncommon, it seems. They just don't take it seriously. I understand, like, stalking and, like, trying to act on it as law enforcement is a pretty tough situation to be in because, it's not Minority Report where they can tell who's going to commit a crime before it happens or whatever. They're not Tom Cruise. And that's kind of the same thing here with stalking. They're trying to prevent a crime or an escalation without it having happened yet, so they don't have all of, like, the evidence to tell them, like, it's going to happen, so it makes it tough for them to actually act. But I really think in situations like this, they should be a lot more understanding and accepting of evidence. This guy streamed 44 days worth of continuous stalking and harassment, and it's all documented, all of it shared, and yet they still didn't take it seriously until he showed up at the residence, and even when he was there actively trying to break in, they didn't show up for 33 minutes and didn't take it seriously. There needs to be some kind of new way of handling this kind of situation, or it's going to continue and get worse. Another streamer named Sweet Anita also had a similar problem with a stalker, except law enforcement was somehow even more inept here when it came to the situation. This stalker would publicly threaten her, send her threatening messages about how he's going to kill her, gut her, use a knife and slit her open, and just like crazy, unhinged shit. And in real life, would actually sit outside of her house and follow her around and even tried to assault her. And still, law enforcement didn't take it seriously for the longest fucking time. It's like law enforcement's hands are tied until they actually commit the crime and kill the person. But when there's this many red flags, why not act preventatively? Like, why not have a preventative measure in place? Like, okay, this guy is publicly making threats, sending these threats about how he's going to kill her, and is actively sitting outside her fucking house. Maybe we should do something about this individual. So yeah, I just think there needs to be some kind of system in place to be a bit harder on stalking, where when there's this much evidence of like threats and then like actually acting on some of the things they're saying in the real world, they need to take that more seriously and be harder on it. Like, if you actually show up, you're getting arrested. If you're within 5 miles of this person, you're getting arrested. Like I said, sometimes there's restraining orders, sometimes they trespass the individual, but even in those cases, it's pretty uncommon they even do that much. So I just think they need to be a little bit more intense on their stalking laws in order to prevent an actual tragedy from occurring. And it's happened before. There's plenty of cases where stalkers have been reported, law enforcement didn't act, and then the stalker ends up killing the victim. Most recently, I think it was last year, and I think this was in the UK, there was a teenager that reported a stalker 5 times and then even got fined 90 euros for wasting law enforcement's time, and then the stalker ended up killing them. A complete failure from the law enforcement there. And that's not an isolated case, it's happened before. I just think in general, there's more the law enforcement agencies can be doing to prevent something like that when it comes to stalking. And then another thing that I'd like to mention is why there seems to be so many stalkers on Twitch in particular. And I think that's because, and I've said this before, you're interacting directly with the streamer you're watching. So for mentally unwell individuals, they get this false sense that they're now friends, and in certain cases, lovers. So a lot of times you'll see these stalkers have the delusion that because they've donated to a streamer or they subbed to the streamer, they're now like romantically involved with each other. And that gives them some sense of entitlement. And when they realize that, the streamer doesn't feel that way about them and doesn't even know they exist, they start to get mad, lash out, and then you see all of these fucking wild, crazy messages and these threats that they'll make and these meltdowns. And it's terrible. You hate to see it. It's absolutely terrible. But it's not like the streamer's fault or anything. That's entirely just because there's so many people on Twitch. Some of them are bound to be mentally unwell and take these parasocial relationships to an extreme level. Parasocial relationships are bad, no exceptions, but they're even worse when the person believes they have control over the streamer or possession of them because they've donated money. Now they're dating and all of this, and then they find out that the streamer is romantically involved with someone else. In the real world, they lose it, go wild, and then ends up in these crazy stalking situations or whatever. It's just a terrible situation that's only been getting worse as Twitch continues to grow. It's not really a problem with the solution, though. There's not a whole lot Twitch can do to prevent that because they can't control the mental health of its users, right? And it's not the streamer's fault who are just streaming and then get someone that keeps donating to them and thinks that they're best friends or they're in love or something because of the money they've given. Like, there's not much you can really do there other than acknowledge, like, hey, look, I'm just a streamer. I appreciate the support and the generosity, but this doesn't make us friends. We're not in love. I don't know you. Ludwig had a whole video called "I'm Not Your Friend," where he just says, like, parasocial relationships are bad. I appreciate that you come to the streams and are generous, but I'm not your friend. And that's really all you can do as a streamer, but that's not going to solve the problem either. There's still going to be those people that cross that line and think that, oh, we're best friends now because I watch them every day or I give them money. And then it ends up in these very awful scenarios and like even creates stalkers in some cases. It's just bad all around, and I don't know the solution to it, but I just wanted to at least highlight that it is a problem, but will hopefully stop being a problem in the near future. But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to talk about this whole subject, and that's about it. See ya.